For many, this heat, dust, and isolation remain the perception of agriculture. However, in the 21st century, agriculture is an exciting, high-tech sector that feeds the world.
So we are at, is it MED automation? You said MED automation or MED?
No, MED. So it actually stands for Mechanical Engineering and Design. That was the original name and got shortened.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wondered.
Yeah,
Okay.
otherwise you associate it with medical or something like that.
Yeah.
So don't do the MED.
So, okay.
But
So
I think they must just introduce themselves.
yes, please would you, it's nice to be here. Please tell us, will you please introduce yourself?
I'm John van Niekerk. I'm the marketer for MED. I've been employed for the last year and a half with them. And yes, that's us.
Great.
Wiekus, I am head of MED projects, and then I do marketing for the company as well. Everybody here does a bit of marketing. And then I do facility design and project management, specifically on the pack houses or the facilities surrounding all the equipment that we design and sell.
Okay. So what does MED automation do? What do you guys, it's one of those things, I know it's a difficult one to explain, but
Yeah, I think if you look up, this is what I was thinking of. If you just happen to stumble past the name MED automation, you might not even know that it's in agriculture.
Yeah. That's maybe more a function of people in the agricultural industry not marketing themselves well, isn't it? I think as an elevator pitch, we do the design of peripheral equipment for fruit and vegetable packing equipment. So by peripheral, I mean packing stations, tippers, flumes, water flumes to transport fruit on conveyors, things like that. And then we're the agent for Fruitful specifically, who's one of the biggest and best suppliers of fruit sorting, grading equipment. So that specifically tells you this fruit is of a specific quality. We then design and manufacture ourselves the peripheral equipment. So, and then as added on, we have parts and servicing of said equipment. And then I was added on later, or MED projects came on later, I should say, to assist our clients with the buildings and the logistics that surround this. Because what we found was happening, I need a pack house and you throw down a building and you put the stuff in, but there's a lot of little things surrounding it and the cold rooms and logistics and stuff that it's not necessarily, they don't have time for all the knowledge of it. And that would be my function, or MED projects function.
Nice. So I think, like you said earlier to us, that you guys are engineers. How did you get into what pulled you towards the agri sector?
I think Gerrit Visagie, the owner, he used to build machines for the agricultural sector when he was still working with his previous company, and he ventured out on his own. And because he knew the area, the farming community and that environment, it was a natural development into that, seeing that there were some shortfalls within the market which needed addressing, and there were some needs that needed to be addressed. And that's how he started with it. He was a one-man show, actually, so for a few years, until he saw that he needed some extra help, and then MED started developing.
I think there was a time when there's always been companies that manufactures the stuff, but I think a lot of it used to be imported and then somebody would start. But I think the technology has changed. I mean, we've moved from having a table where you can pack an apple to designing a table that efficiently, by efficiently I mean cost and not damaging the fruit. It's become more and more important. And I think that's where the engineering design comes from, making sure that you do what you do, but you do it properly and in the right way.
And to add to that, as a marketer, I go around to very many of these packing facilities, and I must honestly say that in the 15, 20 years in marketing in the agricultural sector, I have not come across a company that gives as much attention to fitting new machinery into standard or existing facilities, and does it better than MED can. Gerard and the design team, I think they have got it right. He's got an integral knowledge of how to fit a machine into a standard or an existing facility.
So you retrofit new things onto old ones.
Yeah,
So it's not just
except for people that want to design a complete new pack house, then
Wiekus is at least 50%. I've actually never done the calculation. Is existing facilities that gets refitted. I think we place a great value on making it compact. Making sure that we don't waste space. Rule of thumb is if your machine is R1 million, the building will be R1 million as well. Okay. So it's bigger figures than that, of course. So for us, it's quite important to make sure that the equipment design is efficient, because that reduces the building, which reduces the overall cost. So I think we go through a lot of effort with that, sometimes probably too much.
Yeah, and efficiency through the throughput of fruit through that facility, then at the end of the day, very important.
Okay, as somebody that don't, we get into a lot of pack houses, we see these machines working, but taking a step back, like what you said now, let's say I want to put up a new pack house for whatever produce it is that I'm producing. Do I come to you guys first to design the machine? And
we're the thinking partner in this, yes.
And then we go to an architect to put up the building.
No, you don't go to the architect. I leave that to our project manager.
Yeah, how's that for marketing? The building shouldn't drive the equipment and the processes. Okay. So it must be the other way around. So, and I'm a firm believer in using an architect and make sure it's a beautiful building. It doesn't have to be a Blikstoer. Yes. The cost difference is marginal, but it's tail wagging dog if you do it that way. So you want to design the packing line and make sure that thing is as efficient as possible. And then you start putting buildings around it. And yes, the building will then probably drive some changes in the packing line as well, but not primarily. So the packing system and the operations should drive it rather than anything else. Where's the cold room? Where do I take the fruit from the cold room to the packing line? How do I get it back into a cold room? How do I ship it? That must drive it rather than saying the building must look long and short and tall and whatnot.
Okay. So this is very interesting, but I want to take this like a step further back for people. We're speaking about a lot of stuff where we assume knowledge, but we need to go a little bit further back. Yeah. So a packing machine, what is that and why is it necessary? And I mean, if you go to these big pack houses, the people that are buying the fruit on the shelf, they have no idea about this. So if you could maybe go and look at the throughput of these pack houses, some of the pack houses, what are their boxes? How many boxes do they pack per hour or per day? It's to give the volume. It's important to explain to people that you can't just pack fruit on a standard table. There are conveyor belts. There's the sorter, all that kind of thing. Yeah. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit for us?
So it depends on type of fruit and everything like that. So, I mean, the typical throughput, if you take the CFG example.
Serious fruit growers.
Yes. Okay. So I think that line was, and I don't have the figures in front of me, but I think the idea was to do 520 bins of fruit, 520 bins of fruit per shift, which is, I think, 8.25 hours, if I remember it correctly. But that differs on size of fruit and type of packaging and things like that. So, but that's sort of not a typical line. That's a very big line. But if you go for citrus, for example, you can pack citrus much faster. So there you'll have a 4-lane sizer.
Why can you pack citrus faster?
Citrus is typically doesn't bruise as easily and things like that. So again, that a apple sizer, for example, runs at a maximum speed, or our apple sizer runs at a maximum speed of 8 cups per second. So that's 8 fruit per second.
Yeah.
Of which not each and every cup can be filled. That's a whole different calculation. Whereas a citrus sizer would run at 12 to 15.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that makes a massive difference. And then the sizer that you saw was a cup sizer at Ceres Fruit Growers, and a cup sizer runs slower. So pears is a very difficult thing to pack.
Because of its shape.
Because of the shape.
Yeah.
Things sticking in everywhere. So that runs at 4.5 to 5.5 cups per second. That's sort of the rule of thumb. So you'll get half the size of a sizer on a citrus line will pack 3 times the fruit, or what? Okay. Yeah, I might get my math here wrong.
Okay.
But you can get much more throughput through a citrus sizer. And then the weight of fruit. You must remember the sizer doesn't see anything except amount of fruit. So if you talk bins per day, there's a certain volume that packs into a bin. Yes. All the sizer is. So in terms of kilograms throughput or tons throughput, average apple weight is 125 grams in the Ceres areas, for example, whereas citrus orange is 200, 220 grams.
It's heavier, yeah.
So,
but those lines also weigh the product.
Yeah.
Weigh and okay, a lot of people listening to this know all these things, but also there might be somebody that don't know.
Yeah.
It weighs it, it looks through the fruit into it. With the scanners, with the optical.
So for all intents and purposes, there's a set of cameras that does the shape of the fruit. So you want to know where the stem and the calyx is, and then you're able to determine how round or how long or whatever it is. For example, a pear with a neck and the body bit. What did we have now? Size.
Those are the optical sizer machines.
Yeah.
Okay.
And most of the sizes these days are optical sizes or uses optics. But you use a camera to determine the shape. Then you do color sorting, which determines, for example, if you were seeing Pink Lady, you want to know how much
percentage of the fruit
is pink. You want to know what the intensity of that color is, because sometimes that's important for the sorting process. And
obviously different markets requiring different things.
Exactly. And then you have infrared cameras as well as normal color cameras with which they essentially build a 3D model of the fruit. So each of that fruit goes past several cameras and it builds a 3D model. And the infrared cameras can see a little bit into the fruit under the skin, just a little bit. And by looking at the colors, you can see, let's call it blemishes or quality issues, whether it's a hail mark or something like that. And you see other images you see clearer using the infrared. And the machine, because there's a 3D model and you know this shape and form of this thing, they can overlay it and you can see other things. So for example, in apples, problem is what we call stem crack, which is a crack just in the little at the stem. And they use, for example, a combination of infrared camera and color camera to be able to see that clearly and to say it's not the stem that's there, but look, there's a little crack behind the stem. That fruit goes to class 2 or whatever the sorting group is.
Okay.
So you guys work with this every day, but for people that don't know, what you've just been saying is incredibly wild technology. So each fruit has a 3D model made of it digitally, so that the machine can make a decision on that fruit's quality and size, or its specs, the specifications, to decide which market it needs to go to. And that's pretty sci-fi for most people that are actually just buying the fruit, to know that each fruit has been inspected like that.
And something like
at high speed.
What other people don't know is that each of those photos need to be stored. So you also need to be able to trace in your traceability that fruit from the market, saying when it went through, it actually...
No, it's incredibly powerful. It's not a PC that does something in the background. You know, this is industrial computers with
and there's millions of photos
cameras.
These cameras work within a 3-meter range. In other words, from where the fruit comes into the boxes until it has passed through the internal quality checker on the other side, it's around about 3.5 meters.
I think it's if
not less.
Internal sorting, then it's 1.7 plus the camera.
So in that space of time, this computer system has to process all the information that was sent to it by the cameras, and it has to tell the main computer, all right, this fruit must be offloaded on table number 40.
Yeah.
This is a second grade local market. Please offload it there. Or if there's a fault, go through to the last exit and come back and be sorted all over again. So it's very powerful and it's very interesting technology that is involved in an optical sizer of this magnitude. So, and I think very few people realize that the speed at which these computers work, as Wiekus said, it's crazy.
But how long have you been with MED now?
Feels like forever. I think
7
it's 7 years.
And before that, what did you do before that?
I worked for a company that did industrial refrigeration. So we did big freezer stores and cold rooms for fruit industry and cooling tunnels and things like that.
It's always I'm always curious as to when people were not in this industry, and it doesn't matter what they did as a, like you said, you're an engineer, but you might have been in the automotive industry before it. What do they think the first time that they get to see these things in action?
I've taken a few friends to go and look at pack houses, and they go, I mean, to put it in perspective, I mean, we obviously have clients that has machines that's 20 years old that you now take to a new pack house, and for them it's an experience. And to go to the computer and the operator showing them, look, that's what we did. It's wow for them, and they have perspective. So I think for my wife that will go and buy a bag of apples, I must actually take her so that she understands it. I realize now, but I think it's spectacular. I must tell you, and I mean, if you look at some of the technology that you get, and you've been to a pre-sorter in an apple pack house, that's phenomenal. And if you go overseas and you see what they do, it's with automation, and I think South Africa is moving towards that slowly, because our labor costs are still such that you don't necessarily need to do it, but it's amazing what you can do.
The artificial intelligence that these machines have, that they can actually look through the skin of an apple or a pear or a citrus fruit and see damage internally that you with your naked eye cannot see. And it can actually help you pick that up, or something which might develop from a very small mark into some kind of rot or something like that, which develops once the fruit's packed. That kind of AI that is bringing to our fruit industry is remarkable. And to see what you guys are doing with what you do, how that's adding value and increasing the farmer, eventually the farmer's income, by checking all of that stuff while they're packing at high speed,
or
is
reducing,
phenomenal.
or more, I would say, more reducing risk of claims at the end.
It again just gives you options. I mean, it's not necessarily all of it is AI. A lot of it is take this camera. If this looks like this, then you do that. But there's AI happening in the background as well, and that's sort of the next phases of development, I suppose. But it's amazing what you can do. I mean, internal quality has actually existed for quite a while. So in the American market, they use it a lot for example, on citrus, to determine the acidities and sugar content and things like that. In South Africa,
and in the scanning part,
we can determine the sugar value of the fruit as it goes past
the
bricks.
But I'm just sorry to interrupt you now. That means that there's got to be a light or something coming through it to.
Yeah, it's actually a reflection technology that gets utilized, and the wavelength of the light that is reflected or shone through the fruit. We don't make use of reflection like the other competitors in the market does, but that's something different again. But we can determine the acidity of a fruit without actually puncturing the fruit to get a sample.
So it's near infrared and it's spectrometry, and there's so many things happening there, in all of it. It's you've got to see it to believe it. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. So next time you're at one of those facilities, you ask them to show it to you, and this apple comes out, the machine tells you this thing there's something bad going inside, and it looks perfect. You want to take a bite, but you cut it open and you've got core rots.
I've seen it and been blown away by it. It is phenomenal to see
and it's immensely
what
accurate.
those things do, how they do it, and how fast they do it.
For pre-sorting purposes, excuse me, but for pre-sorting purposes, it is actually very necessary to have this kind of technology available, because you're going to store those apples and pears for 4 to 6 months, if not longer. And if you put something like that into which is not identified as having, let's say, core frot or something like that, and you put that into a ripening facility or a keeping facility, it'll burst out within the first month or first few weeks. It'll burst out and it'll contaminate the whole crate, and you will lose a lot of fruit.
It might, if it's a top crate, it might even go through to the bottom.
Exactly. So no, it's absolutely necessary to have this, but also for our export market, because we have to ship our fruit such a long distance to get to the first class markets. You have to have fruit in those containers that will not rot on the way there.
But it's not only rot. I mean, for example, internal browning in apples. If you sell apples as a class 1 fruit and it gets to some person in Singapore or wherever you've exported to, and they eat it and it's brown, and you're going to have problems. So, and if a container comes to the other side, to get rid of that container, if there's a problem inside, and trust me, the market's there, what doesn't accept it, you have to get rid of that fruit. That's immensely expensive. And that's what the clients want. And certain products do have a tendency for internal browning, certain apple types, etc. And if you catch it early enough, you can sell it locally. So but it's incredible. So, and it works extremely well.
So also, we're talking now quite specifically about the sorters, about the optical, the sorting and the sizing and that kind of thing. But you spoke about that you build the peripheral machinery for the packing. So it might actually be quite interesting for you to say what kind of machinery goes through the whole process from when the time the fruit arrives at the pack house. What are the processes that you need, that you guys fill?
It obviously differs from fruit to fruit.
Yes.
So if you, for example, take an apple line, you will have a tipper or a dumper. So you get, apples is wonderful because it floats, so you can very easily use water for it.
So that's dumping the bins.
Yeah, so you take the bins, which is typically between 360 and 400 kilogram of fruit per bin. And there's various type of tippers, dumpers, whichever naming convention you want to follow, and it gently puts the fruit into water. You let the apples float out of the bin, whereas pears doesn't float, or some of them floats, but because of their sugar content, they typically sink. So there you have to sort of tip it over so that it goes into the water, and then by using proper flow techniques, make sure that the fruit moves forward in the fruit.
That requires quite a lot of engineering.
I've also heard that the guys, they up the salinity of the water to also...
No. We've got a spa bath underneath those pears. We bathe them in a spa bath. And then we wash them through.
The bubbles lift them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
It just
interesting.
lifts it up slightly and then it
You
moves
see, now
forward.
that's interesting. I never knew a
I haven't seen it like...
had a spa on its way to me.
You treat them really well.
There you go.
Now, look, fruit integrity for MED and Grifa is the most important
Of course.
point. And everything we do, every machine we built to handle this fruit on the way to the box, and even on the pallets itself, or palletizing, is built around the fruit integrity and keeping that fruit's integrity in place. You cannot add value to a bad fruit that comes into a package, but you can take away from it.
Yes.
And we want the best throughput of good fruits to boxes that we can actually offer any client. And that's the bottom line of fruit handling. And I have to add that Grifa actually was the first company in the world that did quality sorting on fruit.
Okay, interesting.
And that's no lie. I mean, all the others followed, and they're still following.
Okay. Interesting.
Blatant marketing. So the fruit was tipped. Then we then build a flume in which the fruit is transported. So typically
Is that in water?
In water, So the water does get a bit of chlorine treatment and things like that. But I mean, the amount of chemicals that is allowed is minimal and very tightly controlled. So you don't easily add anything to the water.
Yeah, but often those chemicals is to kill pathogens as well.
Yeah, so in the citrus industry, you would use some, but then it's specific areas, and also you only allow certain levels of treatment and everything. So it's very tightly controlled by the markets, which is probably a good thing. So
with our inspections that we've done to China with the live streaming things, is that they were very focused on that. What
fungicides and pesticides and everything.
Yes. What do you put in? What's the ppm that goes into the water?
Yeah.
And we had one of the pack houses on the inspection that didn't have a water bath. They just had
dry
brushing and
On pears.
and it was a big issue for them.
A lot of the older pear pack houses still has dry tipping, and if you do plums and things like that, that's also typically dry. That's why I'm saying there's so many variations. So each fruit we sort of have to look what's the ideal way to treat it, you know.
So then you were talking about the flume as it takes it to the next stage.
The flume is a water bath or a canal in which you transport the fruit as gently as possible. That's the wonderful thing about water. It's really, really gentle. So you don't have that rubbing of fruit as you would on a conveyor and things like that. It then gets elevated out of that with a roller conveyor type system, so that people can typically, again, not always the case, but can inspect the fruit. So you have, let's call it a sorting station, where some people will look at the fruit and take out blatantly rotten fruit or something that you can see, just sort of as a first sorting function.
And leaves and other things that might have come through.
Yeah, so we have equipment, so you can use fans to get rid of the leaves, but that doesn't work because it's typically wet. So we then have water curtains, and you can use high pressure washers to get rid of the leaves. So the modern day sorting equipment, you don't necessarily have to get rid of the leaf because the machine can see it's a leaf. In the olden days, that was more difficult. But you still want to get rid of it because it after a while it gets crummy and it's not nice. So you don't want it.
But also the actual packet, the box could then also remove a leaf if it gets to them.
But at that point, you don't want that to be there. Ideally, you want that lady to take the fruit in the box, get the box away, or carton. So after the elevator, again, depending on the layout, it goes onto a conveyor that feeds it into the sizer. The sizer starts with a set of V-belts, and then you get your what we call diabolos, which rotates the fruit past the cameras. From the cameras, past the cameras, it might go through internal quality sorting, like we mentioned, and then from there onto the cups, which then puts it onto packing tables, which we start manufacturing again. There's various different ones. So in apples, you get some that has got a slanted top belt so that you can pack fruit into trays. And the trays then goes into a carton. The carton goes onto a conveyor, which we manufacture again typically. And the conveyor goes to a palletizing station where there might be a lifting station to pick the pallet up and down so that the people don't have to lift it up 2 meters to get to the top layer, things like that. In the citrus industry, there's more equipment because you have to wax the fruit and you have to dry the fruit. So you have drying tunnels.
Do you guys build those as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's very few things in the packing line that we will not build. I think you've got to either be able to build everything or nothing almost. So,
so you guys do the peripheral stuff, and the sorters are from Grefa, your partners.
Yeah.
But you can also build a complete pack line, and the guy can buy a different sorter to put in.
Yes. Yeah. So we do that. Typically, again, we're the agent for Grefa, and we often partner with them. We've built lines or peripheral equipment for them that they've installed overseas in Australia, New Zealand, Switzerland, India, quite a lot of countries. So we've done that as well.
That's interesting because one would typically think that you serve South Africa, but it's interesting that you guys are working with them internationally as well. Okay.
No, it's a partnership. It's a full-on partnership, and we do the peripherals for them outside of South Africa as well. Yeah.
Interesting.
What's been the most interesting or biggest or weirdest project that you've done?
Asian one,
Zeg het weer.
the RCCM, that Asian one that Philip and them went to.
Yeah, that was before my time. One in
Yeah.
India, which I
Yeah.
understood was quite interesting, simply because it's just out of our communication is difficult,
Yeah.
traveling there is difficult, working there is not easy. If you forgot a piece of cable or a tool, it's not easy.
Yeah.
I think in Kenya it was the same thing. You don't necessarily get a crane to offload equipment.
You got the idea.
Yeah, you just get 50 people and you offload things. Yeah.
So very interesting.
Yeah.
And so, what fruits do your pack lines normally service?
And is there, well, obviously something like grapes.
We don't.
No.
You can't do
Grapes
can
is a
do it.
very interesting industry, actually. In my starting years was in the grape industry up in the Northern Cape. And grapes is fascinating because it's such a short window. That's somebody that has to spend all this money on cooling and a pack house and everything. And he has, let's say, an 8-week window in which he has to pack it. So they typically build their conveyors on a different way to keep that cost down and things like that. And a grape is also, it's something on a bunch.
Yes.
You can't see the grape behind the 13 other grapes. So it's done manually mostly. And so, I mean, the biggest pack house that I think we did in those days, there was something like 700 ladies doing packing and sorting. It's a lot of people.
And also
And you can't automate it at all in the way that you guys are doing.
There has been machines to automate it, but the accuracy and the handling, because grapes is also quite sensitive to how you handle it. So you can't take a grape and drop it into a bowl. So it's quite difficult, but there has been machines that does it, and I think it was greatly successful, but it did a job.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what are the fruits? It's citrus, apples, pears, plums, and other
Peaches.
stone fruit?
All of them.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
Cucumbers,
Okay.
yeah, so
watermelons, melons.
there's
Banana?
literally.
Yeah. There's not much that we don't do.
Yeah, we built peripheral equipment for the banana guys, but not. Grefa doesn't do a machine for bananas. I don't think there is a machine like that.
No.
Now that I think about it, but
because ultimately you've got the whole bunch in it.
yeah, I
That's
think
an
so.
integrated process on its own. Dumping that bunch of bananas into
Yes, that's something
into
to see.
flume and
It's
then hanging
immense.
them and
That is
ripening them. And
I think Grefa typically does not do cherries and blueberries. That's such a specialized field on its own again. So we've built some peripheral equipment and equipment for that mechanical type stuff. But the electronic stuff for blueberries and cherries is rather specialized.
the berries, you want to keep the bloom on the outside of the fruit. So
And with grapes.
minimal handling. I used to work for Unitech, so
Okay.
I've got quite a bit of knowledge on the sorting of the cherries and berries and such.
But tell us about that.
Heh.
That's interesting.
No, there's nothing to know about it. No, I'm a very stoer Afrikaner, so I like to keep it in-house, and MED does that for me. We manufacture
Okay.
out of the South African market here. So we source our steel here, we get our bearings, we get our chains, everything here. We laser cut on the premises, we powder coat here, we manufacture the rollers here. So it's just the backbone, that Grefa unit that actually comes in, that is not built locally. So
Okay.
once you buy a machine from us and you want to service it, if it runs out of its service time, we give you a year's a warranty on it. Once that's out of warranty, you will be able to do it over the counter at any place in South Africa. So and that makes it unique. With the other guys that's in the market, like the Italians and so on, that is not the case. And that makes it difficult because of the history of the South African farmer. He likes to do things
wants to do everything
on his
himself.
own. He will stand there with a hammer and a spanner and keep that unit running until such time as he can come to the repair of it. But he wants to be able to do it himself.
Yeah.
And with the totally imported machinery, it's just not. You are not able to do that. But that is also why we have got that a very good after-sales team that does the Grefa machinery, and we've got some technicians that also works on the MED stuff. So we are capable of satisfying the market at any time, and that's also very important to us.
That's good to know.
Is the after sales service that we provide, and we do it continuously. We've got a 24-hour internet service where we can service your machine. We can go onto the machine, check what the fault may be,
Yes.
and we can do it here in South Africa. It does not have to go over to the Netherlands where the Crefa units come from. So we can monitor it from here. And then we can send a technician, and we've got technicians in the different areas throughout the country.
Yeah, that's something that we've seen with the other pack houses, that it's a terrible internet thing. They've got to put in internet so that the people overseas could work on a thing if it's not.
The machines are these days, the mechanicals are really well sorted out, on all of the machines. So the biggest issue is updating programs and sorting systems and whatever it may be, or there might be a little bit of an issue with, I don't know what goes on.
Dirty cameras, for instance.
Yeah.
The fruit gets offloaded in the wrong place, and it's just a matter of somebody has to tell you as the operator, listen, camera number 4 is a bit dirty. Can you just clean it?
So you need the internet connection, you log on, and I want to say most of the issues is sorted out that way, which is also fantastic for some guys sitting 200 k's away from the closest technician. You don't want to lose that time.
Our guys are also, or the Crefa people are so clued up that if we install a new unit at your place, they will gather information of other units in that same area that has operated under the specific circumstances of that area. In other words, the climate and wind, you get some damage that's specific to that area on the fruit. We will upload a program for you to have you run that machine from the word go. If you push the start button, you will be able to sort it. And then the tweaking comes in. We leave a technician at your place. He helps you to set up your unit for your specific fruit, and you're off and running.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, that technician finds something on one farm and there's like 3 machines within a close vicinity,
we share it.
That could be, then that machine shares it through to those ones as well?
Yeah, all of the machines have a different way of operating. So Crefa has a system, I call it crowdsourcing, and they will kill me for saying that probably, but they set up a decision file, and the decision file tells the machine, if I see something that is that shape and slightly this and slightly that on the cameras, it means this is what it is. So Crefa's mission is not to say there is a defect, that's defect sorting, and there's a mark or whatever, that means nothing. What Crefa wants to do is it wants to tell you that's thrips on your citrus, or that's a fresh puncture on your apple, or that's stem crack on your apple, or whatever it is. That's very important for them. And that decision file, if there's hail somewhere and the hail causes a defect that looks in a specific way, that gets uploaded to the decision file and distributed so that everybody has that information and can get it. So a couple of years ago, I remember there was these strange white residue on citrus in the north of the country, and it wasn't anywhere else. So the technician went, took some photos, and one of the clients took the photos, sent it to Crefa, update, everybody has it.
So what was it?
It was something that they put on the fruit, if in a specific way causes this residue. So I don't know if the conditions induced it or whatever it was. But the idea is that everybody can then have the information and sort that out. So
interesting. Okay, so that is a very big plus, because that thing about we can't get the stuff because it's overseas and we can't connect. So it's good that the stuff is as integrated as you explained. You were mentioning about R&D, about new things that you're developing that we were chatting about earlier.
I think it's something that we're constantly busy with. So if you go and look at the packing stations that we do, that changes, and we try and do it differently. I mean, again, it's a bunch of engineers, so telling them not to tweak something is kind of impossible. So sometimes
it's like becomes, a mechanic's car is always broken.
Yeah. The problem is if you tweak it into a worse state than what it was. So we're quite careful for that. So for the last while, we've been working on some new equipment. So a couple of years ago, we developed a new soft bin tipper, and that's in the market now for a while, quite a few of them. And we've now done the
drench. We've got a drench that we can take a stack of 3i bins and drench them effectively.
Yeah.
I know that the CRI has made note that you must only drench 2 high stacked bins, but we've done the tests independently, and it has proven that the PPIs of the center bin and the bottom bins on the sides, on the corners of the boxes and so on, that's 100% within the spec that is required. So
and that comes from a client doing 2,000 bins a day. So having a drench that does 2 high at X speed versus 3 high, that's 30% on the same machine.
Massive incremental saving.
So we try and look for those avenues. And then we're busy with some equipment for the nut market, which is still a little bit under
the wraps,
copyrights and stuff. So we'll sort that out. And then we build...
We're busy in the onion...
Yeah, there's some onion seed sorting machines and a few other things. So in the next couple of months, you can't leave people to not do
But for something like that, let's say a grower wants something very specific. Can he come and...
MED, Wiekus explained what the name MED stands for, but Gerard Visage, our MED, he says MED stands for maak enige ding. Okay. That's not literally so, but if you ask hard enough and long enough, you will actually get it out of our engineers.
But
the problem with that is that it might spark something that could change an industry.
No, for sure.
Or it could just end up at pizza place and sort these things.
Yes.
And that's
we designed, for example, a mechanical blueberry sizer a while ago, and we sold exactly one of them. We still think it's a freaking fantastic machine, but I think we might have missed the specific market point. But that's the way it goes. Some of them we sell hundreds of. We did inline scales with kickoffs a while ago to check carton weights, and that works well.
Yeah,
so that you sell a lot of. Whereas the bin, soft bin tipper, we do a lot of.
Yeah, we've done a box filler at the end of the sorting table now, where we can actually connect with the sorting table's motor and have the box filled up to a certain weight, and then automatically turn the belt around so that the fruit goes onto a circular motion on the table whilst we're changing the box. And if we push the start button again, it runs in and starts filling the box.
Sounds like you guys have lots of fun, actually.
No,
this sounds like it's interesting, and to do this and work out these things to make things easier for people.
We do it. I think we do it. The point of this whole operation is to get it to a point where it is easy to operate and it does not cost an arm and a leg. When we have fun whilst doing that, so be it. And
I think for me as an engineer, I think there's you study and you think you're going to work for a Sasol or a Telkom or something like that. But I think the fruit industry is fascinating, and it's big, and there's equipment and there's operations. So whether you're an industrial engineer that wants to optimize operations, a lot of work going on.
On that subject, you're saying that when you studied to be an engineer, and this discussion comes up with everybody we talk about, is how do you make young people interested in agricultural sector? Because if you ask a standard 8 or grade 10 pupil now, what do you want to become? He's going to say, I want to become an engineer. Okay, what do you want to engineer?
And the first thing you tell him is don't. I actually don't know. I think the industry, the CGI and those guys are trying to create that awareness, and I think it happens. But again, if you don't grow up in Tanin where there's a lot of fruit, or for me it was Uppington where there's a lot of grapes, are you really going to be aware of what's happening around you? And I think, hopefully with what you're doing, you're creating that same awareness. If we do keep on doing that and people see a video on LinkedIn showing how fruit goes into a bin or out of a bin, or you label the thing or whatever happens, I think that creates that awareness. So hopefully we can get it a little bit earlier. And I think that's the difficult thing. By the time the guy decided to study accounting, if he's not aware that there's accounting work in the fruit industry as well, massive accounting work, by the way, then he's missed that opportunity. So we You actually need to probably eat school somewhere to create that awareness.
Schools is the big thing that I think is missing the boat in terms of just agriculture.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a Boland Landbouw and a Marlow and all these, but
What's localized?
it's the amount of kids in those schools versus in the bigger sphere is it's a fraction. It's one of the things that I think.
No, but we must. I think with the media, we must just keep at it.
You guys are creating
and
that.
especially with the internet usage that we've got, and the availability of the internet to people. My idea is that we should always push your product onto the internet, and like you said earlier, with a bit more detail, so that an aspiring engineer can see that there has been a lot of work put into this, and he might just find a home there.
Yeah, but there's so many other things. I mean, if you think on people that's interested in quality control and things like that, that's massive. I mean, you have the whole PPCB, and inside each backhouse, there's people inspecting, doing quality control. There's people that has to, I mean, the IT departments. I mean, you've been to CFG. The IT department is massive. It's So there's that. There's the people packing the fruit. There's controllers and operators. There's the financial department is humongous. So there's so many things there. It's more of a general awareness. I mean, the engineers is probably a smaller part of it as well. And the biggest.
Do you think there could be a place for there's just an idea that came up now, that for schools to have, like, I know they've got maths competitions and spelling and what is it, redenaars?
Toastmasters.
Yes, like Toastmasters or debating.
Debating, yes. That you have a engineering competition for, let's say, MED together with Greef. You go to schools and said, we're looking for future kids that we can maybe give a scholarship to, whatever. Have a competition like that. Design something for.
What would be nice is if, for example, the pack houses, if you take Citrusdal, which is a small town, and I mean, lots of children, obviously, because there's lots of people working in the industry. But if you can start it somewhere there, where the schools take, for example, that and do it,
But again, a lot of those growers' kids might not be going to school they might be going to Nepal or
but not specifically the growers. I'm speaking about this. There's a whole town of people that is physically there. I want to say 90% because there is, for example, in Citrusdal, citrus farming, or in Ceres, apples, pears, and all the other fruit. So, I mean, just on that, somewhere there's another Elon Musk or whoever you think is smart enough to do it.
There are companies that actually student engineers, guys that start their studies in engineering, they actually do allocate them, or I know that MED is a part of that fraternity where
holiday work. We call it holiday work, but if you're studying in every year you have to do a certain amount of hours.
It's like an internship.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Paid internship. We don't do unpaid internship. We're nice.
So we are involved in programs like that, where they then send those students here. But to just add to what you've said, I think there is a ways to go with the school kids and on a younger age, or from a younger age, where they start to form their careers. From standard 5, grade 7 on. I think that's
away your age.
I think that's the part where one decides, listen, this interests me.
Yes.
And even if you take a classroom full of people and only 2 are interested, you've actually reached 2 more people.
Yes.
So there's a way to go with that.
But not just for you guys. I think it could be for anybody. People, a nursery, chemical company. Anything.
No, we must get the younger people more involved in what's happening around them. I think they're so distance
they all eat the product that all of us are involved with.
Yeah,
but it takes quite a while to get somebody to understand it. I mean, when I worked in the refrigeration industry, we did abattoirs, and to understand what is going on there, it's fascinating. Not always very nice, but fascinating.
Fascinating to
And
understand
you would-
how it happens.
But that was also, I got involved with that by chance rather than planning, because you don't think when you eat a chop at home where it comes from. I knew because I was from Platteland, but you don't necessarily think about that.
Yeah.
But I've been in one of those commercial abattoirs, and it's
Amazing.
it is what it is, but it's actually fascinating to see how these things work. And like you with a cooling background, as to how quickly those things are cooled down from body temperature to
If you don't do that, it creates quite a lot.
But equally back in the industry that you guys are working in, I mean, when you buy an apple off the shelf, you don't know about that the apple didn't just jump in the box. There was a lot of effort that went into that.
Yeah.
And I think what we've been doing with our podcast is actually, it's a little bit of fun to connect people to each other. So our previous podcast, we asked them to anonymously.
It's an anonymous question.
An anonymous
from
question
the previous guy to the current people, and we're going to ask you guys to also give a question for the next guy.
So the question from the previous guys is, what is your passion? What makes you jump out of bed in the morning? And don't say the alarm clock.
You're talking work related.
Yes.
obviously.
Or agriculture.
Anything.
People, meeting the people, getting
Really?
to for sure.
I must say, I don't know how to describe it, but I love building buildings. Not that I physically build them, but the design and understanding what you need and then getting it together. And it's like it becomes a little pet project / baby, So there's a hell of a lot of ups if things go right, and with any project, there's a lot of things that goes wrong, and that's breaks your heart almost. And it's weird to describe it. You need to. I suppose if you've built a house, you'll understand it. But it's amazing to start with a discussion about a client. So maybe I should do this, and then a couple of months later, standing in front of a
Make the
beautiful
concept a reality.
Yeah, and the same with the machines. All of that stuff, and then making it work together, and it's awesome.
I've always said to people, if you stand around a braai, and it's all different people you just meet. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And I always joke and say, I've got nothing against people who's accountants, but if you say, well, what do you do? No, I'm an accountant. Oh, okay. What do you do? There's no discussion following it. But with what we do is, I can say, well, that video, I made that. I did that. The same with you. You can say, I designed that thing, and that's how it's working.
Yeah.
And I think that gives me a big kick for the things that we
The creative side of things, and the thinking
physical
about
output.
yes, and the thought that's gone into it, and the concepts of getting things from concepts to nuts and bolts or bricks and mortar.
Yeah. And we need the accountants to do their bits so that we have the money to do that, to make sure that we made money at the end.
Exactly. Still not exciting.
I have too many accountant friends, I can't say anything. Shut up about that.
I left accountancy instead at 7. So I'm not going to copy for another 3 years.
Yeah, I barely made it through, so definitely not my strong suit.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No.
It's just a parting.
No, I think thank you. It was actually quite interesting. I was a little bit scared at the beginning, but it was quite fun.
So you found out we don't bite.
Yeah, and I'm sitting across from the table from you, so I'm not sure if you can. But yeah, I think it's awesome that you do this. So please keep on going, and I think it's great. And the awareness that you're creating, I think, is going to be good for us as MED, but more for the industry. I think there's a lot to be done for the industry. So thanks. I think it's good.
It's really a pleasure.
Yes. Well, we love doing what we do.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We really do.
We love it.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, guys.
No, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.